You step out of a warm building on a cold day, and for one brief second, before your brain even registers the number on the thermometer, something in you flinches. Your shoulders rise. Your arms cross. Your breath catches slightly. That reaction happened before you decided anything. Before you thought about jackets, or temperature, or how far you have to walk to your car. Some part of you responded like it was in genuine danger, even though you were just stepping outside for 30 seconds. Why does your body do that? The uncomfortable answer is that it isn't really reacting to today's cold at all. It's reacting to a threat that hasn't existed in its original form for tens of thousands of years, using a response built for conditions you will almost certainly never face. Start with what that flinch actually is mechanically underneath the skin. Researchers studying human thermoregulation describe an almost instant cascade the moment cold receptors in the skin fire signal. Blood vessels near the surface constrict within seconds. Muscles tense in preparation to shiver. Stress hormones spike into the bloodstream. All of this happens before your conscious mind has finished processing what's going on. This isn't a considered decision your brain makes after weighing the situation. It's an ancient alarm system firing on a hair trigger faster than thought. The strange part is how oversized that alarm is for a modern cold snap. You're not standing in an open blizzard with no shelter and no way home. You have a car with heated seats 30 feet away, or a building with working heat right behind you. Yet your body's opening response looks almost identical to what physiologists describe in genuine cold injury emergencies. Full vasoconstriction, a real stress hormone release. The early stages of a system bracing for a survival event that, statistically, is not actually happening. Your body isn't calibrated for parking lots and short walks. It's calibrated for something much older and much less forgiving. For most of human evolutionary history, cold wasn't an inconvenience wedged between two heated buildings. It was one of the leading causes of death. Ice Age winters brought unpredictable exposure, no guaranteed shelter on a given night, no guaranteed fire if the wood was wet or the wind too strong. In that kind of environment, a body that reacted instantly and dramatically to any drop in temperature had a real, measurable survival advantage over a body that paused to assess the situation calmly first. Evolution doesn't reward nuance in a life or death system. It rewards speed, even sloppy speed, if the alternative is death. Think about the math your ancestors' bodies were unconsciously running. A response that fires too early costs almost nothing, just a moment of unnecessary muscle tension and a brief hormone spike that fades quickly. A response that fires too late in an actual Ice Age winter with actual exposure and actual risk could cost an entire life. So natural selection built a threat detection system with an enormous margin of error baked directly into it. One that would rather overreact 1,000 times in a row than underreact even once. You inherited that exact same margin of error. It just has almost nowhere appropriate left to spend itself. This is where things get genuinely strange, because the story doesn't stop at simple overreaction. Researchers studying the body's broader stress response have found that the physiological systems activated by sudden cold exposure overlap significantly with the systems activated by other, completely unrelated threats. The same stress hormone pathways light up. Similar patterns of muscle tension appear across the body. A comparable spike in general alertness shows up on measurement, whether the trigger is a sudden chill, a loud, unexpected noise, or a genuine physical threat. Which means, on some biological level, your body may not fully distinguish between a cold gust of wind on your face and something closer to an actual emergency. It runs a scaled-down version of the exact same protocol either way, just dialed to a lower intensity for the smaller trigger. That's not a design flaw, even though it feels like one when you're standing there shivering over nothing. It's a leftover setting from a survival system that was never redesigned for indoor plumbing, insulated buildings, and heated cars, because evolution doesn't proactively rebuild systems for a future it can't predict. It only slowly adjusts systems that are actively failing, and this one has never technically failed. It's simply outlived the environment it was built for. Consider how strange that timeline actually is once you lay it out. Insulated homes, central heating, and heated vehicles are, in evolutionary terms, a blink of an eye old. A few generations, at most, out of a species' history stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Your threat detection system had all of that time to calibrate itself around real, recurring, physical danger. It has had almost no time at all to recalibrate itself around central heating. Biological systems simply don't update on that kind of timescale. You are quite literally running ancient software on brand new hardware, and the software hasn't been patched since long before there were walls to patch it for. That mismatch shows up in more places than just a shiver at your car door. Researchers studying cold-related stress responses have also observed that even anticipating cold, not just experiencing it, can trigger a milder version of the same cascade. Simply knowing you're about to walk into freezing air before you've even opened the door can nudge blood vessels toward constriction and stress hormones upward. Your body isn't just reacting to cold. It's bracing for cold, the same way it might brace for any threat it has learned to expect, treating the forecast itself as a kind of early warning siren. Here's what makes this even stranger, and where the story takes an unexpected turn. Researchers studying cold exposure and mood have noted something that seems, at first glance, to contradict the panic response entirely. Brief, controlled cold exposure, the kind used in cold water immersion research at various physiology labs, can trigger a measurable release of certain mood-related brain chemicals afterward. Once the initial alarm phase passes and the body essentially convinces itself that the threat isn't actually escalating into something worse. In other words, your body's cold alarm appears to have a built-in off switch. But that switch only flips after the body has had enough time and enough evidence to conclude the danger has genuinely passed. That's almost exactly the pattern that would have mattered most to a human living through an actual ice age winter. A sharp jolt of alertness at the very first exposure, useful for making a fast decision about finding shelter or building a fire immediately. Followed by a calming signal once safety was confirmed and sustained, useful for conserving precious energy instead of staying locked in permanent crisis mode for hours on end, which would have been exhausting and ultimately dangerous in its own right. You still reliably get the first half of that system, the alarm. You almost never stick around in the cold today long enough to earn the second half, the calming payoff on the other side. So every single time you dash from a car to a building entrance, wincing and hunching against a wind that isn't actually dangerous to you in any meaningful way, you're triggering the alarm half of a two-part system that was built for long, open, unsheltered exposure. And then you're cutting that system off entirely, walking through a warm door before the second half ever gets a chance to run its course. Doesn't that reframe the shiver completely? You've probably interpreted that flinch for your entire life as simple discomfort, a body being a little dramatic about a chilly morning walk to the mailbox. But researchers studying evolutionary mismatch, the specific gap between the environment your body was engineered for and the environment you actually live inside every day, would describe it very differently. That flinch is a fully intact, fully functional ice age survival reflex, executing with total precision, aimed at a threat that stopped being genuinely relevant to your daily life thousands of years ago. Your body isn't malfunctioning when it overreacts to a chilly parking lot. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to function, for a world that, for you personally, no longer exists. There's something almost strange, even a little poignant, about carrying a piece of internal hardware that meticulously preserved across countless generations, for an emergency you will statistically never face in anything close to its original form. Imagine a fire alarm still fully wired into the walls of a house, sensitive and functional. Long after the actual fireplace it was originally built to guard against has been sealed shut and replaced with a thermostat on the wall. That alarm isn't broken. It's simply doing its job in a house that no longer needs it to. And there's a deeper layer underneath all of this worth sitting with for a moment. Every time you notice that flinch and interpret it as weakness, as your body being unusually sensitive or oddly dramatic about a bit of cold air, You're misreading a signal that has nothing to do with your personal resilience at all. It has nothing to do with how tough you are, or how used to the cold you've become, or how many winters you've lived through. It's simply an old circuit wired long before language, long before shelter, long before you, doing precisely what it was built to do the instant it detects the exact same input it was designed around. Modern life didn't remove the trigger. It just removed almost all of the actual danger that used to follow the trigger. The alarm never got the memo, because alarms don't read memos. They just fire the same way every single time the conditions match. Think about how many other pieces of your daily experience might be running on this exact same kind of outdated logic. A racing heart before speaking in front of a room full of people who mean you no actual harm. A surge of anxiety scrolling through bad news that poses no direct physical threat to your body in that moment. A flash of unease in a silent, empty parking garage at night, even when nothing is actually there. Each of these responses likely traces back to the same underlying principle as the cold flinch, an ancient detection system built for a world of immediate physical danger, still running its old calculations inside a world that has, in most moments, made those calculations obsolete. The cold flinch is simply one of the easiest versions of this pattern to notice because it's so physical, so immediate, and so easy to time against a known and harmless trigger. Open a door. Feel the shoulders rise. Watch the reaction happen in real time, entirely disconnected from any actual risk. It's a small, everyday window into a much larger truth about how much of your internal experience is still being quietly run by systems built for conditions that no longer apply. Next time that shiver hits you on a short walk to your car, or that flinch runs through your shoulders the second a cold door opens, you'll know exactly what's actually happening underneath it. Not weakness, not an overreaction that says something about you personally. Just an old, careful, extremely well-built alarm system, still doing exactly the job it was built to do, faithfully, in a world that quietly stopped needing it to do that job centuries ago, without ever telling it to stop. You step out of a warm building on a cold day, and for one brief second, something in you flinches, not because you're actually in danger, but because some ancient, careful part of you has never fully believed, not even once, that you aren't.